Big one. Mixed breed, big dog with an attitude. Okay. Now, because we nearly take the skin off, we take the skin off except for a little strip kind of down the back, but we are going to come up, we're going to make a midline cut, and I have found the best thing to start in the suprasternal area and cut down, because very often when you come up from the bottom, you're going to hit that zippy humerales muscle and you're going to cut it in half. And so I think we have better control going down this way than up this way. As soon as you get past the zippy humerales, somebody else can do this. Now this can be a 4-person or a 3-person job, because what you really should do is then do a straight cut going here and then up here, and you want to make a cuff cut all the way around, and you can snip off the dew claw and just go, because you want to see where the tendons insert, okay, so you make sure you get the right tendon. And this is a muscle to become aware of, not to cut it off. This is the brachioradialis, and it is not either in the flexor or the extensor compartment. We want to come down all the way down here, we might as well do it today, and make sure down past the calcaneus, do a little cuff cut here, and we do the same thing. We cut it up here, then down the leg. For some reason, the lower appendages are so much easier. Then when we put it to bed, we just wrap it top and bottom with some extra, and I'll have plenty of twine here, or little, I think this is probably floral stuff. So our goals today is to get the skin off. It is much more difficult in the male cat than the female cat. I think they're just like horsehide, because the testosterone, they've got thicker skin. But here's the contrary thing in the male cat. In the male cat, the muscles are nice. They're big. They don't have fat overlying. In the female cat, you can have fat overlying muscles in which you can't see the grain of the muscle. You don't know what you have, and it becomes harder. You've got to get rid of it first. Okay, so our goals here is to, and also there's an incision here made by the technicians, and you see that we have our veins have blue in them, and our arteries are going to have red, and our lymph vessels will have yellow dye in them. And so that's especially good in 242, is you want to explore, you want to look at, your subclavian and so forth and so on, and femoral vein. And you also want to look at your lymph vessels when you get into the ventral cavity here. All right, so we have the abdominal group here, and we have the pectoral group here, and that's what we want to do today. The second time, we do the shoulder, and we do the forearm, and then the third time we come together, we do the lower limb and basically the gluteal area right here. Okay, so let me just show you the external oblique, and here it is, sort of overlaps our rectus abdominis, which it doesn't really in the human, but it does, and you can see it on this side right there. I'm pulling it a little bit further, but it's going to overlap it to some degree. And what you do is you put a little, it's not really a scalpel thing, although you can pick it up and just make a little incision there, and then as you look at the fascial plane, you're always cutting along the fascial plane. You don't cut into anything else. And so because this is very, very thin, and then what you do is you get your hand in there and start separating things out. The hand is actually an excellent tool, because when we start this, and when we start coming down here, we'll use a scissors, not a scalpel, a pointed scissors, and we do a couple clips, then you get your hand in here, and your hand will facilitate this far faster and easier than if you had to take a scalpel. You're bound to cut something that you shouldn't if you do. And so we use our hand, we clip it with the scissors, and then use our hand. So external oblique. The internal oblique actually is, you can see it right here, okay? Now I've cut it here, And this didn't do such a great job down here, but you have to separate, and this is why it's so difficult. You can separate the internal oblique. Remember, the external oblique's like that. The internal oblique is somewhat like that, the fibers. And then the transversus abdominis fibers are directly across. So I've separated out this amount of transversus abdominis, and you can see the direction of the fibers. And this is our internal oblique here. And so they're very tightly, and you don't want to get, I'm just a whisker length from getting into that abdominal cavity, and I don't want to get in there. Well, I want to leave that.
Is that the organs right there?
Yeah, you can see them, right. You want to leave them alone. Could be probably fat or something either. So when I would say start with your pectoral group and get your hands wet on that. Now, here's your xiphoid process, and the xiphi humerales comes off of the xiphoid process. All of these muscles, this pectoral group, ends up either on inserting into the humerus or onto the parts of the antebrachium. Okay, so we have our xiphi humeralis. It's a very flat muscle, and so all you want to do, and you can get underneath this, okay, without any problems, and it goes all the way up. But there's a tendency for these, once they get up to this level, to kind of fuse together, and it's hard to divide them out. But this one can be done all the way up into here. So this is the xiphi humeralis coming off of the xiphoid process. And then the pectoralis minor is actually much greater in size than the pectoralis major. Okay, and you can get underneath here. I didn't bother. Oh yeah, I can get underneath all the way under here. And this is the pectoralis major. And if you carefully stretch the tissue here, you can see where they come together, and getting them actually separated perfectly is not so much our tendency, because it goes all the way underneath here. It goes all the way underneath here, this pectoralis major. This pecto antebrachialis, pecto referring to the chest, antebrachium, it's really inserted into the forearm. And so it's a kind of a ribbon of muscle. It's very flat. And once you get up, and you can see the lines here, you'll see it. If you have a lean cat without too much fat, you'll see the lines here. You want to cut there, then tip up an edge here and start cutting along the fascial plane. And so that will ensure that you get this off there perfectly. And eventually, starting next time, we will cut it right here. We also want to delineate, we call this the clavobrachialis, also known as the clavodeltoid, and it's right next to it here. And we can then take this one, and we want to get underneath it along the fascial plane and bring it up like this. All right? So xiphi humeralis, pectoralis minor, pectoralis major, pecto antebrachialis, and clavobrachialis, or clavodeltoid. Either one would be okay. Now, I require, if you're going to be in here and doing the work, I require that everybody, before your team goes, every team has to know these muscles. It's just kind of like when we started the bones, I was always asking, well, what's that, what's that, what's that, what's that? We're going to do the same thing. So I want you to know these names, and the first person in your team that knows them is responsible for helping the other team members, and then you will demonstrate to me by saying external oblique, internal oblique, rectus abdominis. You can actually take the rectus abdominis, and you can see its outward edges along here, and it goes up all the way underneath here, all the way underneath here. You see the edge of it right there, all the way underneath. I did that once, but just don't do it every time. So I want you to know, so it's the abdominal group and the pectoral group after we skin everything out. And everybody can have a hand in skinning. The reason we have the cats here is so that 4 people can easily get around a cat without any problem. So we have to have a minimum of 3 people on a team or 4. And I prefer the gentlemen be on male cats and work on different cats, because you guys are stronger and you're going to get through some of the skin a little better than the ladies, unless you've been milking goats for the past few years. That's probably true. Okay, so the next time we do all of this, we do the forearm, and we're doing the shoulder back in here. And be careful that you don't mess up your latissimus dorsi. It's right here, all right? And of course, the brachioradialis. So here's the deal. What you do, let me just explain. Okay, we choose an end and we cut very close to the seam. Then you go over to a sink and you drain most of the water. Not all of it, because we want to keep these cats moist. They're used again for 242. We do the muscles, they do the vessels, the ventral cavity. Then come back, and this is your inner bag. There's also going to be an outer bag here, and so the cats will have 2 bags. I had 2 bags on mine. And so you'll need lots of twine, which I've got. So just put that underneath where it's not gonna, it could be standing in the sink too or something like that. And then you want to get your scalpel, your forceps, all that, those tools are in your drawers between the seats. So you want to make sure everybody's got some. I can get some extras. If we're lacking any, I can bring some in from another area. In all honesty, this is not like the old formaldehyde impregnated tissue. Now somebody asked me earlier before you were all in here, why do we do the cat? Why do we have to do this? Because you can study this all day long, and until you get your hand on a dead body or a recently deceased one and feel the difference between what's in your brain and what's here, you never really get it all. You never really understand it. It just comes together. The muscle, the tendon, all that, the fascia. And by the time you get through with the cats, you'll have a great appreciation. There's fabulous stuff now, virtual, anatomy stuff, even for humans, that you can go in, and all that's great. But we don't get a human; we get the cat, and it's worth our time. It's an education in itself. It's worth doing. So I'm not a person that says you shouldn't use animals as instructive tools. Absolutely, I think you should use animals as instructive tools, that it's necessary for us, and we're going to take care of people and have an idea about them. And TCC, they have humans. I don't think they get to dissect, but they certainly get to go in and check it out. So we do the best we can, and as yucky as you may think this, once you get going, honestly, once you get going, you don't think about it so much. You just do it.
Has anybody gotten sick?
No. Cool. Not ever in my classes have they gotten sick. You shouldn't think about it. If I were you, stop thinking about it. I should have my dog here. He stinks. He stinks. He needs a bath badly. And if I had to wash my hands 3 times before he stops the smell. Okay, so these cats really have nothing on my dog.
What kind of dog?
That's a big one.